Right. So hopefully later on someone from the accommodation office will rock up and we're going to talk about that as well. And then Mariam will be giving a little bit of an overview of some of the stuff our students do for each other. But the bit that I'm going to be talking about will be what? The lights. You want some lights? Okay. Dim the lights. Okay. This is Mikhail, by the way. So Mikhail is the outgoing DP organizer of the Geology and Physical Geography program. So if you want to talk about that, then, or Pebbles. I mean, this guy loves Pebbles like you would not. You would not. I mean, it's just. Oh, that's dark, isn't it? That's a bit too dark, isn't it? That's a bit too dark. Maybe a bit lighter. Okay, right. So if you do fall asleep, then it's recorded. So if you do fall asleep, then just email me and I'll send you a link to the recording. So why would you want to come to Edinburgh? It's going to be one of the things. And also, I'm going to give you some details of some of the courses. So a few of you have been asking questions about course structure and that kind of thing. So that's going to be in this as well. But again, if you have any questions, then do ask over lunch or when we're just hanging around. But first of all, I guess congratulations on your offer. Okay, so it's reasonably difficult to get one. We do reject a large number of candidates each year, so well done. If you do this on results day, I mean, do not ever jump up and down particularly in front of a photographer for a national newspaper. It's somewhat demeaning. But yeah, so and I guess just to point out also, when it does get to results day, there is the potential for a little bit of flexibility on your offers depending on your background and also your kind of fee status. So if you want to ask about that, then do so. But yeah, so you guys have done well to be here, so congratulations. And what I'm not going to do is talk too much about what is Earth Sciences. I guess most of you know what it is already. We're basically using physics, chemistry and biology to look at and to understand and to model the Earth and the processes that have going on now and have gone over through its evolution. So that covers things like remote sensing of like oceanography, or using kind of like satellite data to measure the gravity field of Earth, or using seismic waves to investigate its internal structures. Lots of different things that geoscientists do, but I guess you kind of know most of that already, so I'm not going to dwell too much on that. I'm going to try and convince you to come here, because we would like you to come here, because you are all very good students. This is a really terrible reason to choose to come to Edinburgh, because Edinburgh University is a big fancy pants old university with a big reputation. That, I mean, it matters a little bit when it comes to getting a job after you've graduated, but actually it's a terrible reason to choose to go to any university because of its, fancy pantsness. So bear that in mind. We are fancy pants, but it doesn't matter. It does matter that we are in the city of Edinburgh. So, I mean, I think it is a nice city for students to live in. It's a nice city. I like living here, but I'm not a student. But there are lots of fun things going on in the city. There are three other universities in the city. So there are a large group of students living in Edinburgh. So there's lots of fun stuff going on. There's also lots of fun intellectual activity going on because there's a large group of students with a wide range of interests. So there is always going to be something for you, and we'll come on to that later on in the talk. Edinburgh is also located in the country of Scotland, which is not only a fantastic place to live as a person, with all kinds of nice things like sensible rules and laws on, renting accommodation and useful social policy and all that kind of stuff, but it is also a fantastic country for geosciences. It's got the most fantastic diverse range of rocks and environments that we can go out and look at and study and be amazed by. So this is Skye, which is very nice. But actually, probably one of the more important reasons is the staff. So the people like Mikhail and me who actually do the teaching. And the thing that Edinburgh has is that we have a lot of staff. So this is just the staff within the School of Geosciences that could conceivably be teaching on earth science degrees. So it's not even the geosciences stuff. There's lots of us. And what that enables us to do is not just be kind of, there are lots of us, that's great, but it allows us to offer a very wide range of courses, particularly going into the third and fourth years, where you're able to do something that you want to do rather than what kind of a more limited range of academics can do. So there's lots of Lots of awesomeness going on in the staff. Oh, you can see if you can find me. Anybody see me in that picture? I look somewhat different, yeah. Yeah, there I am. Huge diversity of staff. We've got some people look like eggs, some people that don't look like eggs, but yeah, lots of different kinds of staff. Michaela's more of the egg type now, right? Yeah. But actually, yeah, so I guess probably the most important reason to choose a university are the courses, because that's kind of what you're really here to do. So, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But also another reason to choose a university are the students, so the people in the room with you now, right? So you will learn a lot more from your classmates doing your degree than you will ever learn from people like me. So yeah, sure, I'll stand at the front and give a lecture and set a practical and I'll talk to you about stuff, but actually you'll spend a lot more time talking to each other about it and helping each other kind of understand stuff. And that act of communicating with each other and figuring things out as groups actually is a really effective method of learning. And the good thing about it at Edinburgh is that we have lots of really good students, which is kind of a circular argument for convincing you to come here, because we want good students to come because good students are here, and good students come here because we want good students to come, and so on and so forth and so on. But it is nonetheless true that we do have some really fantastic students that are really helpful for each other. And Mariam will be talking a bit about that with the GeoPals, which is cool. Anyway, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to talk a little bit about the courses. So I kind of put together this kind of Euler diagram of kind of what these different terms kind of mean in Edinburgh. At other universities, this terminology might be slightly different. But basically, we're in a school of geosciences, okay? And that includes not just the earth sciences, not just kind of geology and geophysics kind of subjects, but we also have people that are doing ecology, doing atmospheric sciences, doing geography, and we also have some people that actually are doing geography but are so kind of different from geosciences that they don't like to be considered part of geosciences, but they are, but they aren't, but they are. So we spread out across all of the physical sciences, but also into some of the social sciences and the humanities as well, which is really important for our physical science students, because I was talking to someone earlier today about kind of one of the natural hazards courses, and we have a course in natural hazards and risk, and there's no point knowing where it's risky to build a house because of the earthquakes if you don't tell anybody about it. You can't tell anyone if you don't engage using kind of social science skills. Sorry, I kind of just diverged off from my train of thought there. So what this slide is really for is that you might be doing, say, a geology degree, but there will be a degree of overlap with geophysics, with environmental sciences. So because we're offering these different degrees, there is ability to kind of like mix and match a little bit throughout the courses, and we'll come on to that in the next bit. So we offer a range of courses within earth sciences. So there's geophysics, and there's a variety of different flavors of geophysics, focusing either more geological or more atmospheric sciences, meteorology. And then we have 3 degrees: geology, environmental geosciences, and then geology and physical geography, which we kind of group together as another patch of degrees, and we'll talk about those in a bit as well. But also within the School of Geosciences, there are also ecology and environmental science degrees. I think one person has applied for one of those as well, and geography degrees as well. So there's a huge amount of stuff going on, and also a possibility for switcherooing, which we will talk about as well. So if we just put geophysics to one side for a little bit, and we talk about those other 3 degrees first, the geology, environmental geoscience, and geology and physical geography. So this is the structure of the first 2 years of the degree program. So in the first year, you will do some core courses. So evolution of the living earth, that's the one that you're doing the practical for just now. Introduction to the geological record, which is all about how we actually make observations of rocks, the things at the back of the room, how we can do that rigorously, and how we can do that in the field to build up kind of our field skills in terms of making observations and rigorously recording them, but also kind of starting to do some geological mapping. And then Earth Dynamics is a course which is kind of the introduction to the Earth system. How does plate tectonics work? Why do we get volcanoes in certain places, not others? How do sedimentary basins work? All this kind of stuff. So the thing is that we get all of our students do the same in the first year, which means that if you are doing any of these degrees and you want to switch into one of the other ones at the end of the first year, then that's very straightforward. Okay? provided that you pass and everything. But anyway, so the thing that's kind of maybe unique to Scottish degrees, for those of you who are more familiar with the rest of the UK system, is that there is an enormous amount of option available in these first 2 years. So in the first year, usually around a third, some people choose not to do the maths course, a third to a half of your time will be doing something else. And that can be in any subject across the university, as long as it fits within your timetable and is not medicine or veterinary science. So we'll come on to some of the options that you can do there. But this allows you to either explore a subject area that you find interesting, or maybe you wanted to carry on from what you're doing at school, but didn't want to take as a whole degree, or it allows you to try something you haven't tried before. You thought, well, I'll give that a go. Or you can use these options to take more kind of geoscience specific kind of degree courses, which would maybe be useful for something you want to do in the third or fourth year. So in the second year is where you start to specialize into your kind of chosen degree area. So everyone does this course on geomaterials, which is kind of the physics and chemistry of the stuff that the Earth is made of. There's a lot of mineralogy in that course. So those of you who are looking down the microscopes upstairs, that's a large part of what that course is about. And then the different degree streams, so the geologists do Introduction to Geophysics, which is an introduction to how you use physics or physical techniques such as gravity surveying, electromagnetic surveying, seismic surveying, to investigate and to model Earth processes. Global Tectonics of the Rock Cycle basically is a follow-on course from Earth Dynamics. It's how the physical processes of the Earth system, like plate tectonics, erosion, how those develop kind of sedimentary basins and what kind of rocks go into those, and how we then look at those rocks and then infer processes from the past. The Geology and Physical Geography course has that course in as well. But it also has a course in geomorphology, which is about how we can look at the landscape and infer how that landscape has maybe changed through the past from its shape, but also infer from the shape of the landscape what are the physical processes that are going on operating now that are shaping that landscape, which might indicate particular natural hazards. The Environmental Geoscience degree has 2 courses for that, one of which is oceanography, which is actually an option that quite a lot of students take from across the other degree programs in these kind of optional courses. So it's very similar to the Earth Dynamics course in its kind of goal. It's basically just to introduce you to the ocean, how it works, how it moves around, what the chemistry is of the ocean, how that determines where life is in the ocean and where life is not. And then we have a course, Environmental Geochemistry of the Earth's Surface, which is taking kind of the chemistry that we do in evolution of the living Earth and geomaterials and taking it a little bit further and looking about how kind of nutrient elements like nitrate and phosphate and how pollutant elements like heavy metals like lead, zinc, cadmium, how those move around the Earth's surface, how they get transformed out of kind of the solid Earth, through soils, through aquatic systems and into life, and then how they get taken out of those as well, so in terms of how we might remediate pollution problems. And then the options. So you can do really anything that you want to in those options. So you can take courses in astrobiology, which is a physics course, which is about how life might exist on other planets. You can take a course in natural hazards or sustainability or meteorology as one of your options to maybe keep yourself a little bit more related to the Earth sciences. Or you can do something completely wacky and crazy, like this guy. Right, so geophysics is similar in structure in that you do core courses and option courses, and then in the second year you kind of specialize into what kind of flavor of geophysics you want to do, except that with geophysics there is no choice in the first year. And the reason for that is that the geophysics degree is very closely aligned with physics degrees in the physics department. So 4 of the courses that you do in the first year are maths for physics with more maths and more physics, physics and even more physics. And that's designed to give you really the quantitative basis to be able to do the higher level kind of maths and physics, which are required to be a geophysicist later on in the degree program. You'll do some of the geology, the earth science courses to fill in effectively your options. And And then in the second year, you kind of decide whether you want to be a geology, geophysics kind of person, a geophysics and meteorology kind of person, or you're not sure. And then you can take some of these as options if you want to. Okay. So I guess I've explained most of these things as well. So physics of the Earth basically just takes introduction to geophysics a little bit further in terms of it's kind of using some of these more difficult physics and maths concepts into modelling the Earth. And then the geophysics and meteorology degree program has courses about how the atmosphere works. In a very similar way to the oceanography course introduces the ocean, the meteorology course introduce how the atmosphere moves around, what are the physics and chemistry behind atmospheric processes, and how have they changed through time, how we can use those to predict weather and predict climate into the future. So that's the first year, sorry, the first 2 years. So there is, I should point out, an option to not do 2 years, to do all of that in 1 year. So you can condense all of that 2 years into 1 year, where we basically just take away all of the options and you just do the core courses. So that takes 1 year less, but you get fewer options. So that's if you're interested in that, then that's worth discussing later on today. Then you move into the honours part, the third, fourth, and optional 5th year, and that's where the stuff actually counts for your degree. So the stuff you do in the first 2 years, that you have to pass it, but it doesn't count. So depending on what degree program you're doing, we usually reduce the number of options a little bit in the 3rd year, sometimes completely, sometimes there's a bit more options. And that's to make sure that you're really prepared for what you do, particularly in the 4th year, and particularly for your dissertation. So you'll be doing a research project, and that can be field-based, particularly in the case of the geology degree program, or it can be lab-based or computer-based, but you need the skills that we're giving you in the 3rd year to do that. So this is an example of one of these kind of courses. So this is a course that the geology and the environmental geoscience students do in the 3rd year. So it's called Practical Geochemistry and Data Analysis. I run it, so it's of course awesome. So it's not really, so I'm a geochemist, so I love doing all kinds of geochemistry stuff, but it's not really a course about geochemistry. Only 20% of the assessment is actually geochemical theory. So we do have some lectures. But we're actually also trying to use courses like this to build up other kind of skills as well. So we have some aspect of how we kind of do computer programming and use that for data analysis. So that forms 30% of the course. And then most of the assessment is we basically, because we're a big department with lots of research facilities, so this is one of our SEMs. We've also got an electron probe and XRD and XRF machines. We allow our students to go and use those. We give them some samples. Here are where the samples are from for the geology students. So these were collected on one of the 5th year trips to Iceland. I'm not going to even try and pronounce the volcano. There we go. That volcano over here. And the students were given a set of samples, let loose in the lab, and they made some measurements. So this is an electron probe map of the sodium content of a plagioclase crystal, and students are then tasked with basically coming up with a scientific kind of problem which they go and write a report around. So this is all about setting up the transferable skills in terms of working in the lab, kind of doing the science, but also in terms of processing data, writing reports, which becomes useful in their 4th year projects. So in that senior honours year, so in that 4th year, a large part of it will be some kind of research dissertation. That will either be a mapping project or it could be a lab project. And then you will do some core courses to bring together the stuff that you've learned throughout kind of the degree, but then you will take some options. But this time, the optional courses, they have to be from within the earth sciences. They can't be kind of basket weaving in Norwegian, which you can do in the 1st year. Norwegian is an option. Basket weaving is not an option, I think. But they were after courses like sculpture, so you could do Norwegian sculpture with baskets. So just as a kind of a bit of a taster, so these are some of the options which are available for the GPG program in the 4th year. So you can take, there's a range of stuff that you can do. Okay. So there's a website which is available to you guys from your MyEd login page, which I think you should all have access to now, called Path. it's kind of, we can show it you when you have your kind of one-to-one meetings if you want to. But you have access to that, and it'll take you through all of these options and tell you all about them. So you can explore that to your heart's content if you wish. So that's the kind of the structure of the courses. I probably should mention that there is also this 5th year for most degrees, not for environmental geoscience, but the 5th year is basically more of that research project. So that's an option available to you if you're really interested in pursuing a career that involves kind of more analytical skills and more research. Buzz forwards to, okay, so field work. So actually a big reason to come to Edinburgh is we have quite a strong focus on field skills. Both within Scotland, because Scotland is a fantastic place to do field work. So this is a geological map of Scotland. I think I have animated this very slowly. So the thing you can see with this map is that each of these different colours represents a kind of a different geological environment. So in the Midland Valley here, so this is Edinburgh, Glasgow over here. This is a place where in the Carboniferous, the Earth was being pulled apart. So the geological environment is very much like East Africa is today. Whereas the Grampians up here, that's kind of more kind of island arc kind of setting. So this is maybe a bit like Japan. We've got the southern uplands. So this is where there was a subduction zone and sediments were being scraped off crust. So that's a bit more like Barbados. You've got basically the inside of an enormous mountain belt up at the top there. So huge range of different kind of environments. And we kind of go to these not just as field camps. So we do have kind of field camps where we go away for a week or a little bit longer. But we also try to integrate kind of field excursions to places that are local-ish to Edinburgh as part of the courses. So for instance, the 3rd year course in paleontology and sedimentology, some of it's based up in the lab, some of it's based in the lecture theatre, but we also go out into the field and look at the actual rocks and fossils kind of where they are found in their natural habitat to get that kind of context. And we're able to do that because Scotland is such a good place to do geology. We also go to not Scotland because there are some processes where we're wanting to actually see the process going on, which is not happening at the moment. So if we want to see active volcanoes, Iceland. If we want to look at moss, we go to England. Environmental geoscience students go to Jamaica. There's a trip going to Cyprus. We saw the rocks from earlier. Yeah. So it's we have lots of field trips. And I guess one of the really good things about Edinburgh and I guess this part of Scotland is that this is where geology was developed as a subject. So those of you who have looked maybe at geological textbooks may have seen this photo or a photo like it. So this is one of the sites that James Hutton went to figure out things like how old the Earth really was. And it's nice to be able to go to these sites and see them in their kind of like original context, how that's integrated into our teaching. But these sites are also useful for looking at new science. So there's a Hutton section like this on Arran, which has recently been completely reinterpreted. So it's not just kind of old fuddy-duddy science. There's new stuff going on too. I should point out that all of these field trips, if they're core to your degree program, they are free. I think you have to pay for your food or beer, but accommodation, travel, and the facilities costs. So on some of the trips we hire things like boats and whatnot to go and do some oceanography. That's all paid for. So, yay. Yeah, so again, I guess moving on from that kind of that historical aspect, it's kind of nice to be in a university where it was kind of first figured out. But actually the reason I kind of show this slide is we've got loads of kind of really old farts up here who, I mean, they were very important for the development of the subject. The guy I want to point out is this one, John Playfair, which you might not be familiar from a science background, because these guys were scientists, Lyell, Hutton, Murray. But Hutton and Lyell, they wrote really, really boring books. They were completely impenetrable. John Playfair, on the other hand, was very much like the Brian Cox of the day. So he was a very good scientific communicator, and he had lots of rich friends. So he was actually the guy who popularized the subject. And this is a really important part of our degrees now. It's not just doing the science, it's being able to communicate it. So one of the things we try and instigate throughout our degree programs is these transferable skills of communicating our findings. We also have an option in the 4th year, a geoscience outreach course, where you can focus on that aspect of science, the communication part, in its entirety for 20 credits if you wish to. But we don't just have the old people, we have the new people as well. So we have kind of, it's great to be in a department where we have genuine world leaders in their field. So we have people like Gabby Hergel, who is one of the lead authors of the climate change IPCC report, climate change. Have kind of polar medal winners. We have Steve, the dinosaur guy, who writes lots of books about dinosaurs. If you read books, they have dinosaurs in. He probably wrote them. So it's great to be in this environment where lots of intellectual activity is going on. It's very good. We also have a career service, which is very good. So when you leave the university, we don't just go, off you go, good luck with that job. So we have a person within the career service who's just dedicated to geoscience students, so she's focusing on kind of on that, which is quite good. And these are kind of the areas that our students go into. So it's not, it used to be that students from Edinburgh were oil and gas, loads of money. And we still do send some students into those areas, but it's broadened out a lot more now. So we're much more into the kind of sustainable use of kind of earth resources. So that does mean that we still need to dig stuff out the ground and sell it to people because people need stuff. So we still have kind of people working in the extractive industries, but there's a lot more scope for people getting employed in some of the areas of those industries into making sure those resources are used sustainably. So making sure that you know, they're well regulated, but also cleaned up afterwards. So people working for environmental consultancies or engineering consultancies that do this kind of like waste management kind of stuff. And energy now is no longer just burning fossil fuels, it's also kind of renewables, nuclear. Where are you going to put all that waste? What are you going to do with all that energy that you create by wind turbines? You've got to store it somewhere. Maybe you can store it in geological reservoirs. There's a huge scope for employment in these areas here. But you will be graduating with science degrees. Okay, so you will have skills which enable you to go into all kinds of these kind of generic, degrees, jobs in things like working for a bank, working for a management consultancy. Yeah, those are kind of, you still will have the skill set in terms of looking at kind of data sets which are large, which are complex, being able to distill ideas down into communicatable kind of like outputs. Yeah. But also, the reason to come here, again, just to reiterate, it's the students, right? You all kind of like will learn off each other. So there's a lot of stuff that students do for each other. There's kind of the GeoPals, which we'll hear about in a bit. Edinburgh is a really international kind of university. So there is an option to go abroad for most degree programs, but actually you don't have to go abroad to get that international experience because students from all around the world come to Edinburgh to learn. And so you can get that kind of cultural exchange within the university. And there's also lots of student societies. Like we have like 20,000-ish students, lots and lots of students. So there's lots of societies. And if there's not a society there for you, there's enough students around that you could make one like of your own. Okay? So if there's something you're interested in that's not there, you can make it. Yeah, like the Dermatology Society or the Medieval Society. There is a medieval. Someone was asking about medieval earlier. Anyway. Yeah, so just to stop there, these are some of the reasons. So we won't take any questions now. Do you want to do your little thing, or do you want to do accommodation? Do you want accommodation? Let's accommodation, and then we'll move on and around. So if you have any questions, feel free to like shout them out at me now, or you can kind of shout at me whatnot during lunch, and we can do that. What am I doing here? You got a stick?
I do.
All right then, stick it then. Would you like some?
Yes, please. What time are we finishing?
One-ish, but you need to do a quick.
One-ish, so I've got 10 minutes.
No, you just carry
I can keep going. Is anyone desperate for the loo? Because you can quickly go if you want to while I'm sorting out the slides and things like that. If anyone's sitting there thinking, I really don't want to sit through another 15 minutes, just go now. It's absolutely fine. There's, on both floors, you should be able to find toilets. If you want to go, go for it.
Right, there you go.
Thank you. Where's the plug in?
It's there, I think.
Do you think?
Well,
I'm guessing this is not your usual building.
yeah, that's it, I'm changing stuff. USB. You are running off to USB. Oh, it's 13 slides. Fine. Quality, not quantity.
It'll have to be.
There's a.
Thank you. All right, so we'll just give everyone a moment to get back from the loos. So if anyone else is feeling desperate, do go for it. You can run if you want to, just in case. We shouldn't take too long. We are going to this afternoon, so after you've heard the sort of little bit of a sort of a talk that we've got, we are going to actually go and see the accommodation at the campus. So if there's anything that we don't have time to go over, any questions people have, we can absolutely just save them for the tour, and we can go over things then. So we should, throughout the course of the day, have plenty of time for everybody to ask all of their questions. But I'll just give it another minute or so for everyone to get back from the loos.
While we wait, is there any question?
No, I think everyone's hungry. Everyone's waiting on lunch. I have to say, I used to be a student here, so I used to be in this lecture theatre. It's been about 10 years since I've been in this building. It's very exciting to be down here instead of up there. It is. There is a red light, that is true, and that microphone cube thing that gets chucked about as well. That is also an improvement on the last time I was in here. But I have to say, I'm not a geoscientist. I'm a physicist, which is why I was in this building. But I occasionally dabble in planetary science. So if anyone's interested in that, you know, we can have a chat. But not with Edinburgh Uni, so I'm a bit of a traitor. What was that? Oh, well, I couldn't possibly comment. I'm a bit outnumbered, I think, in this situation. How many students do we actually have in the room, or potential students? Could you put your hand up for me so I can see who you are? And I'm not basing it very unfairly on what I think about people's ages. Excellent. We're about 50-50. That's grand. We've got a good gender mix as well. That's good.
You all been traveling this morning, or who's been traveling this morning?
Yeah, long day then. Who's come from the furthest place? Anyone from somewhere really far afield? Anyone from overseas? Yeah, where have you come from?
From the Netherlands.
From the Netherlands. Okay, so that's not too bad. That's yeah. Still in Europe. We're still one, at least I think, so far today. I'm not sure. I haven't had an update. But that's another question for another day, isn't it? But I will get started just gently, and then when anyone comes back, they can just sort of join in with us, so we're not waiting too long for lunch. But basically, I'm just going to give you an overview of the accommodation process and the accommodation options available to you, because there is some choice while you're staying here with us. So first things first, I'll just walk you through how you actually go about applying, because at this stage, that's probably the thing that you're going to be thinking about. That's what's going to be sort of on your mind most. And you can apply as soon as you have an offer from us. So I'm assuming that everyone who's a potential student here has an offer from the university. That's probably why you're at this offer holder day. And it doesn't matter at this stage whether it's a conditional offer or an unconditional offer. We're quite happy to take applications from absolutely everybody. The only difference is it is dependent on when you will actually be allocated your accommodation. So conditional people, we're just waiting on you getting your exam results, and then we'll allocate you pretty much on exam day, whereas the unconditionals, we can get on and do those a little bit earlier on. So other than that, not much difference at all. There we go. Excellent. So when you're making your application, once you have your offer, and don't worry, you haven't missed anything there at the back, you're going to apply via your MyEd. So you'll have been given MyEd login details with your offer, so your student username, and then you'll have been given a password, I think, that you'll have to change in due course. And when you go on there, it's a pretty simple process to apply. If anyone does have any problems technically actually making the application, because that does happen to students from time to time, just get in touch and we'll be able to walk you through it or make any changes that we need to so you can make your actual application. So as soon as you then become unconditional, if you're waiting on a conditional offer, then we will make your allocation for accommodation. And if you're already sitting there with an unconditional offer, brilliant, you'll not be waiting too much longer because we'll start our allocations probably sort of May time this year. We'll start doing the first students. And don't worry, if you're not part of the first batch of students, if you're waiting right up until the end for your results, that's fine. It's not first come, first serve. We allocate on a proportional basis, so we always save bits of each building right up until the very end. So if you're desperate for a particular thing, don't worry, the chances of it still being available are pretty much 100%. It just depends then on the other students' requests. So once we give you your offer, we'll send it via email. It will also pop up on your MyEd. But it's really important, especially if you're sitting here with an unconditional offer, that you're checking your student email from sort of the end of April time, because that offer could come at any point, and we don't want you to miss it because you only have 7 days in which to accept. It seems a little bit harsh, but we have so many students making their applications that we just have to make sure that we're going through them as quickly as possible, so any students who are on the waiting list aren't missing out, because we're waiting on somebody making a decision on something. So I imagine most people will be covered by our accommodation guarantee. So I'll just run you through what that is really quickly. Now, you need to have had Edinburgh down as your first choice. And that's not just because we're wanting it to be everybody's first choice, of course we are. But if we were allocating people based on the second choices, insurance choices, all these different things, then we would have so many more students to have to guarantee, and we just don't have that much accommodation. You need to put in your application by the 16th of August, so that's really important. I imagine most people will do it like really, really soon if they haven't done it already. But just in case, don't let it slip and don't miss the date on the 16th. You need to be unconditional firm by the 30th. So that's usually after everyone's exam results have come out. Some people might still be waiting because they're contesting results, they're appealing things. That's fine. Just keep in touch with us. Just let us know what's happening, and then we can accommodate that sort of thing. You need to live, for the most part, outside of the city of Edinburgh. So there are some Edinburgh postcodes that are still eligible to be guaranteed, but if you're sitting there with an EH postcode, just get in touch with us and we'll be able to tell you whether you fall under the guarantee or not. And you need to be coming, last but not least, for the full academic year. So students that are just coming for a semester, we'll try our best to accommodate them, but it's not absolutely guaranteed for them. Okay, so options. This bit is really important. So a couple of decisions that you sort of need to make when you're thinking about accommodation. The biggest one is probably, would you like us to feed you, or would you like to feed yourself? So would you like to go catered or not? And there are some kind of repercussions to your choices here, because catered, of course, is going to be more expensive than self-catered, but you're not having to budget for your food. So have a think about what sort of things you might eat. If you've got particular dietary requirements, catered is not going to be for you. If you do sports clubs really early in the morning, again, catered is not going to be for you. If you're really fussy like I was, not going to be for you. But if you're not too bothered, pretty general, you quite like us to feed you, then catered might be an option that might actually work out cheaper if you're getting things like takeaways or eating out all the time anyway. So that's something to think about. You need to consider whether you're desperate to be en suite, and a lot of students certainly are when they first think about this. A lot of them do change their mind a little bit later on. Or whether you're happy to share a bathroom with other students. Typically, in our sort of slightly older style accommodation, you're never sharing with more than, say, 4 other students to a bathroom. Some of the newer accommodation, they've tried to kind of fill them up a little bit more, so you might be sharing with, say, 6 students, for example, there. But again, it's really, some people need it for medical reasons, some people just really want their privacy, other people absolutely couldn't be bothered one way or the other. So it's a really nice way of saving a little bit of money if you don't mind sharing a bathroom. I mentioned that we have some properties that are a lot newer than others. That's very true. We've got a handful of properties that have been built in the past sort of maybe 5-7 years that are really snazzy and new looking, whereas we've got some that are sort of Victorian buildings that have been converted. So depending on how you feel about the sort of building you'd like to stay in, that's another consideration. We do have some studios. So studios are kind of a step up from an ensuite. So you not only get your bathroom in your room, you also get your cooking facilities in the room. So it's kind of like a little sort of self-enclosed flat or sort of house. They are going to come at a premium price-wise, but again, some students for health reasons do need to have all of those bits and pieces enclosed in their room, and that's something that we can accommodate. Room size, we have some rooms which are on the smaller side. Still absolutely functional, absolutely fine. But if you're after a little bit more space, you can opt for a large room or even superior rooms in some of our accommodation blocks. Again, it's going to cost you a little bit more, but you'll get to see some of the types and sizes of the rooms when we go on the accommodation tour a little bit later on. So you can also choose, if you're going self-catered, this doesn't apply if you're doing catered, but self-catered, you can choose whether you'd like to be in a single gender environment, so single gender flats, male, female, you can choose, it's up to you, or whether you'd like to be in a mixed gender environment. All of our catered, as I said, is mixed gender. This year we're adding some new questions to the application form to try and help get people even closer to what they're after. We're asking people if they want a quiet flat. So if you're thinking, I want to have a great time party in a university, a quiet flat isn't going to be for you. And we're also asking people if they'd be interested in a non-alcoholic flat, because that's something we've had a surprising amount of interest in from students over the past however many years. So last but not least, location. Now, you probably will be having lectures down here, is that right, for the first year?
It's a mix, yes. So
a mix.
Some will be here, some will be in the central area.
Grand. So split between the two. So it is up to you where you choose geographically to place yourself. With that in mind, as you will be having some lectures down here, I'm not going to recommend the properties that are up in the north in Leith, because you've got, say, a 40-minute walk from there to George Square, from where you can get a shuttle bus up to King's, but that's going to make your commute really long. So that might count out some of the accommodation blocks for people doing this particular course. Again, there are a couple of accommodation blocks right near to King's buildings, which is great for when you have lectures down here, but then you'll be walking to here to get the shuttle bus down to George Square for when you have things that are in the central area. So it's up to yourselves, but it might be something to think about in terms of walking distance and bus distances just to get to places. Catered we're going to have a look at when we go around on the tour, so I won't talk about this too much. But basically, in our catered campus at Pollock Halls, we've got 3 blocks which are en suite, we've got 5 blocks which are shared facilities, and you'll get to see one of each of those, and you'll also get to see one of the self-catered, the only self-catered block we have on Pollock Halls as well. So you get a bit of everything when we go up there. Lots of social aspects to life up there at Pollock, because there are so many students, about 2,000 students really close together. But again, we'll talk about that down on the tour. And the catering, you get 14 meals a week if you are catered, so that's 2 meals a day. And that is your morning meal, so your breakfast or your brunch on the weekends, and then your evening meal, because students just aren't around campus to have their lunch, so that's not included in your food package. But again, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Self-catered, now these are scattered all about the city, so especially if you go in self-catered, it's really important to think geographically about how far you're happy to walk, how far you're happy to cycle, get the bus to get to where you need to be. A lot of students don't take that into consideration before they apply, and then they end up asking us for a transfer when they've moved in, and we have a big waiting list of students wanting to transfer. We can try and accommodate where we can, but if you can try and think about it more before you make your application, it just makes it that bit easier for us. So flat sizes starts, I think there are actually some 2-person flats as well. A couple of 3s, we've got loads, 4s, 5s, 6s, they're really common flat sizes. And one of the properties goes up to 12-person flats. So if you want a really busy sort of social environment, mixed gender 12-person flat, that might be the sort of thing that you're looking for. So you do get a lot more flexibility in self-catered. You're not tied to meal times in the same way as you are in our catered accommodation. And there's a lot more flexibility in location as well, because they're not all on the one campus on the one spot. But if anyone's interested in self-catered, again, we can chat about that some more when we go on the tour. So this is the important bit, especially probably for all the parents and extras that we have in the room. So this is the prices that we were advertising for the year that we're in just now, so 18-19. They have gone up a little bit, as you would expect, for 19-20. So catered is always going to be more expensive, as I mentioned, but that is because it does include your food in that budget there. And those ones, it will be this year probably starting from maybe closer to 7,000, going up to sort of 9+. You can get twin rooms if you really want to be catered, you really want to be en suite, but you want to save a bit of money, you don't mind living with somebody. That is an option as well, and those, of course, are cheaper because of that. Self-catered is definitely cheaper. This year it's going to be starting at closer towards the 4,000 side, and then probably going up again closer towards the sort of 7,000. If you want a really cheap room, you can go twinned, self-catered and shared facilities. If you really want a bargain, you'll make friends really easily if you're in a twin room, hopefully, as well, which is one of the benefits of living like that. Wouldn't have been for me as a student, but a lot of students, especially international students, they really do want somebody who's like a ready-made friend when they move into university. Here are the twins There we go. So we always use bigger rooms for the twins as well. We don't try and stack 2 people into a really small room. They are spacious. They have 2 of everything as well. So obviously 2 beds, 2 wardrobes, 2 desks. It's just mirror image, basically, if you put a mirror down the middle of the room for the most part. You get them cheaper, of course. You've got somebody in the room, and we do try and match our twins up reasonably well. It's a bit of a kind of twin dating service. We ask more questions to people that are interested in twins based on things like your bedtimes, what time you like to get up in the morning, what music you listen to. We try and match people as well as possible. And with our twins, it's always single-gender twins as well. So unless you specifically requested a specific other individual, it would always be single-gender. For our conditional insurance people, so for people who have as their insurance choice, you are still guaranteed accommodation, but you're only guaranteed twinned or bunked accommodation. Now, the chances of you actually being offered that are pretty slim, but just because of the volume of applicants that we get, if you are an insurance choice, then that is what's down as your kind of insurance offer. I'll just speak quickly about Res Life. So Res Life are lovely people that live in the buildings and also work in the offices. They're there to deal with student welfare. So any issues that you might have while you're there as a student, maybe you've fallen out with your flatmates, maybe there's an issue with like noise outside the flat or something like that, they will be able to help you in that instance. They're also there to make you have a really nice time. So they're introducing people. They have things like barbecues at the start of term. The alpacas always come and visit us every now and again when it's exam time, that sort of thing. One of the blocks had puppies in the other day, which I was quite jealous about. But they do all these sorts of things to try and kind of cheer the students up when they're feeling a bit stressed, and also to try and encourage them to kind of get together. Lots of trips as well, so you guys might already be going on a bunch of trips as part of GeoSciences, but there are trips that they organise up to the Highlands and things like that, down south, down to England as well, lots and lots of different things. This is going to feel like a really long way off for most people, but second year and beyond, we don't just dump you out of our accommodation and say bye to you. We do try and help you in finding accommodation for second year and beyond. We have lots of flats all around the city that we either own or we manage. So the university is your landlord, basically. And we send a big mass email around to everybody being like, do you want accommodation for second year? If you do, let us know. We invite everybody to a lottery day, and there are loads and loads of flats available on that day. This website, you can have a look at it if you want to see the sorts of flats we have available after second year. There's still quite a lot of stuff on there, even after the lottery day. It's the Domus website, and there are individual flats, couple flats, family flats, and also group flats as well. So if you don't quite fit into the sort of usual box in terms of accommodation, there might be something for you on Domus instead, and we can do that for first years too. With the university as well, one of the benefits is that we don't ask for guarantors, we don't take deposits off you or anything like that as well. So just bear it in mind. If you do decide to go private, that's absolutely fine. We can help you and we can give you advice on that sort of thing as well. But sort of once you go into private, then unless you get in touch with us and ask for help, that's sort of you hopefully sorted with your friends in your flat. So I've gone through really quickly because I'm very aware we don't have too much time. But basically, once you have an offer from us, then you need to make an application, and that is through your MyEd. Now, when you do make your application, you're not looking through all the properties we have and choosing a specific room in a specific block. What you're doing is giving us 5 preferences. So with your 5 preferences, you can choose 5 different accommodation blocks. Sometimes you can choose more than one room in the same accommodation block, but you're basically giving us an idea of what sort of thing you would like. So if you choose 5 ensuite options, then we quite quickly get the message that it's an ensuite that you're after. If you choose 5 that are clustered quite close together, geographically speaking, then we'll think, obviously, that is the area that they want to live in, that sort of thing. So most times students do get one of their 5 choices, and it's not like 5 is a great choice, 1 is a great choice, 5 is a bad choice, or the other way around. They're just 5 equal preferences that you give us. Most people, as I said, do get exactly what they want. Every now and again, we can't offer somebody one of their 5 choices, but because you've given us 5, then we've got a pretty good idea of what the next choice would have been, what the 6th would have been. So we usually can offer people that. So you need to check your emails, so especially if you're unconditional, you need to check your emails from sort of the end of April onwards. You can start checking them just now because you might get exciting things sent to you, probably not from us, but maybe from other places. But definitely from there because we don't want you to miss your offer. We will email multiple times, we will ring you to tell you you have an offer, we'll try our very best not to let you miss it. But if you can just try and keep on top of that. And if anyone's going to travel in over the summer, brilliant. Just give your login details to somebody you trust so they can keep checking your email on your behalf. You can keep updated with anything you might need to know using social media. We all do that a lot these days. So we have a Facebook. We have lots of different types of things. There we go. And we're on YouTube, apparently. That's exciting. Twitter, Instagram. I don't think anyone uses Google Plus these days. But all those types of things are a really nice way. If you follow us on Facebook, then you'll get all of the notifications as they come through, which is really good. So does anyone have any burning questions before we go from here? Because I think, is that lunch next? Or? Very quick, and then maybe lunch. Excellent. So if you think of any questions in the meantime, I'll be taking part of you on the tour later on, and then it will be one of my colleagues taking the other part of the tour. So you can save them up for me. That's absolutely fine. And then we'll get them all when we go on the tour.
I don't know how you put this on, do I?
It's already turned on, so you just have to click on somewhere. I'll give you my phone. I'll give you...
Is this working?
Yeah.
Yep, it's working. Yay. Yes, I do want to get my thing up. Yes, I do want to get my thing.
Oh, no, it's not. Oh, yes, it is, isn't it?
What is not working?
No, it's not you, it's me.
Okay. Question. We've got a question. Yep. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you.
Lots of people do. In terms of volume of students, we've got 2,000-ish places located, and then there's another sort of 10,000 students that we have to house. So statistically, most people are self-catered. Often it's an economic factor. Lots of people choose to go for the cheapest. That's what I do. And some people, it just doesn't suit their sort of lifestyle. But these days, if somebody would feed me, I would absolutely say yes. So absolutely, I'm not going to.
That's a mood. All right, cheers, thank you. Okay, so hey everyone, I'm Mariam and I'm a third year geology student, and I'm basically going to run through very briefly what GeoPals is. And that's a Students Association run scheme. We provide spaces for first year students to get academic and social support from students in upper years in like safe, confidential, and informal settings. And so we're a scheme run by students for students, which means that all students within all schools of the university are driven by the needs of first-year students, which would be you if you came to if you're coming to Edinburgh in September. So in the context of earth science degrees, the most relevant schemes that you might rely on would include GeoPals for geography-based courses, GeoPals for geology and environmental geoscience-based courses, or the physics peer mentoring scheme for physics-based courses. And so I'm in the GeoPal scheme, which means I help to organize and run help sessions for all compulsory geology and environmental geoscience-based courses in this academic year. And so this is an example of like one of what a schedule might look like if you choose to study at Edinburgh next year or years after. Because GeoPals is pretty much run by second, third, and fourth year students, most of the time we base our experience. Yeah, we base all of our help sessions on our own experiences when we took our courses in first year. So this is so that we can impart our experience on first years who would be taking these courses for the first time. So, and this is often useful because if there was any crucial information that lecturers would sometimes forget to tell you, not to their own fault, we would be there to let you know, particularly if we talk about field trips that you might go on or any assessments that you're tasked to do over the course of the year. So yeah, if you struggle at any point in your degree, I mean, rest assured there are many students within the School of Geosciences and the wider university who would more than likely be willing to help out. And you know, university is hard in general, for whichever degree you choose to take. But the good news is that most of the time there will always be someone who is in the same boat as you. So, I mean, that's all I'm pretty much going to say. So, yeah, but I'll be hanging around later in the museum with the rest of the staff and students if you have any questions about the scheme or just university life in general. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Laurie.
Cheers.
We're gonna head back over to the museum, the Grant Institute, for food. There'll probably be some like very hungry-looking lecturers hobbling around the food. So do feel free to barge them out of the way, go straight to the front, so you can have the stuff that's actually for you. Yeah. So if you have any questions about like the GeoPals, Mary Moore, I guess. Julia, you were in, and Emma as well. Yeah. There is also a kind of a student geological society and a student geographical society, which are there for more of the fun aspects of what students do. I guess you could ask Mikhail about that, because he was there at 4 o'clock in the morning. Right. So now I'll stop the recording.